On the morning of May 24, 2004, Brooke Wilberger, a beautiful blonde, blue-eyed coed who had just completed her freshman year at Brigham Young University, was washing lampposts in the Corvallis, Oregon apartment complex managed by her sister and brother-in-law. One moment she was there, the next moment she was gone. She left behind her flip-flops, a pail of sudsy water, and no witnesses to her disappearance. Brooke, an honor student athlete, a devout Mormon, and an integral part of her church community, was last seen wearing a hooded sweatshirt, a grey Brigham Young t-shirt, dark blue jeans, small hoop earrings, maybe a silver watch, and a ring with CTR engraved on it, choose the Writer Mormon tradition. She was 5'4" and weighed 105 pounds. She had a scar from a gymnastic accident that extended from her wrist to her elbow on her right forearm. When police arrived at the apartment complex, they found her sandals askew, leading them to suspect a struggle. Her purse, keys and other personal items were left in her sister's apartment, and her car was still in the parking lot. It was clear to everyone involved that whatever had happened, Brooke did not leave the parking lot willingly. Only one man saw something. His name was Brian, and he called the police, saying he'd seen a green minivan driving erratically. Before he could explain further, the call was disconnected, and he never called back. It was a tiny bit of information, just one of too many tips from helpful citizens. The community rallied. Brooke grew up in Veneta, a very small town of only 3,000 people, 30 miles south of Corvallis, itself a university town of only 50,000. Among friends, schoolmates, hometown folk and the LDS church family, within days, over 4,000 flyers with Brooke's picture covered the area and reached every state of the Union. Being prepared for an emergency is one of every Mormon's goals, and they were certainly prepared to get the word out about Brooke. Her photo showed up on huge bulletin boards by the interstate and on buses all over the county. Public service announcements showed up on television. Every gas station, every cafe, every convenience store had her flyer in the window. They held vigils. They held press conferences. They went on America's Most Wanted television show. Brooke's parents were featured on Good Morning America. Local real estate agents and property managers searched vacant properties and outbuildings. They held self-defense classes for women. At 19, Brooke was too old for the Amber Alert system for missing children, but as several high-profile cases recently have shown us, media pressure keeps the case alive. And those who loved Brooke were prepared to keep the pressure on. Police received over 1,100 tips, including 400 from psychics. Theories abounded, stretching to the idea of Brooke being kidnapped and sold into white slavery in some exotic location. 650 volunteers searched 4,000 acres of fields and woodlands around the Corvallis area. They searched the rivers and wetlands in canoes and kayaks. They searched the mountains on horseback. But Oregon is vast and relatively unpopulated. There are thousands of acres of woodlands, thousands of acres of wilderness. A website, findbrooke.com, was established with a downloadable flyer in a variety of languages. In the first 24 hours, the site received 26,000 hits. Brooke's disappearance hit a nerve with Americans, and news of her abduction spread like wildfire. Police began to focus in on 4 persons of interest, but in the tumult, Brian's tip of seeing the erratic green minivan was almost entirely overlooked. Eventually, the eye of the hurricane focused on Sung-Koo Kim, a 30-year-old man living with his parents in Tigard, Oregon, 80 miles north of Corvallis. Kim, who graduated from Washington State University in 2001 with degrees in genetics and cellular biology, had been arrested 10 days before Brooke's disappearance on suspicion of stalking an Oregon State University student. Oregon State is located in Corvallis. The female student of his obsession was a member of the OSU swim team and frequented the Oak Park apartments, where Brooke was staying with her sister. At first glance, the swim team member looked much like Brooke. When he was arrested, Kim had a copy of the woman's photo and her bio from the OSU website, along with a bag of dryer lint from the Oak Park apartments. That wasn't all they found when police searched his room in his parents' home. They also found 3,400 pair of women's panties, collected from 7 different colleges in the state, 40,000 photos of violent pornographic pictures of women being tortured and raped, and 4,000 pornographic videos. According to Jeff Lasowski, Deputy Washington County District Attorney, the vast majority were of women being raped, tortured, dismembered, or killed. Kim also had a file named OSU.doc, which detailed an apparent plan to rape, mutilate, and strangle a girl. Kim was out on bail when Brooke disappeared. Kim said that he couldn't have been in the area of Brooke's abduction, as she was snatched between 10 and 11 a.m. on May 24th. He has recorded proof that he executed a computer stock transaction at 11:14 a.m. He was also videotaped by security cameras at 12:30 p.m. buying a laptop with his father at Circuit City in Tigard. Authorities challenged this flimsy alibi, saying not only did he have time to get from Corvallis back to Tigard in time, but that anyone could have executed that stock trade for him, as it was made from his sister's computer. With a clear eye toward the Wilberger case, Kim was arrested on the underwear theft charges in Multnomah County, and his bail was set at $10 million. Investigators in Benton, Washington, and Yamhill counties, where the other colleges are located, pursued similar charges against him. Yamhill County eventually set his bail for $4 million, $1 million in Washington County, and $100,000 in Benton County. The shadow of Brooke Wilberger hung like a shroud over his head. Family and friends of Brooke never gave up hope, never gave up the search, but as the days, weeks, and months went by, momentum was hard to sustain. Cammie and Greg Wilberger, Brooke's parents, asked the media to give the family some space and some privacy. "Our lives have been changed forever," Cammie, a teacher in the Bethel School District, said in an interview with the Register Guard in June 2004. "Even when Brooke comes back, our lives will never be the same. The healthy thing for Brooke and ourselves is to try to be the best we can be. That includes trying to get back to some of our regular things. I always wondered how people could keep up hope for a long period of time," she continued. "But time fades and you don't even realize how much time has gone by. It seems like yesterday that Brooke disappeared." The LDS church family surrounded the Wilbergers, who credit their faith for sustaining them. "We believe this life on earth is but a small part of eternity," said Marie Bell of Eugene, a former public affairs representative for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. "In the case of the Wilbergers, we believe the family is sealed together for eternity. Every fiber in my body says they will see her again." "And what kind of God could allow something like this to happen to a girl like Brooke?" "Mormons," Bell said, "believe God gives agency and free will to people. Given that, there will be people who use that agency in evil ways." Cammie Wilberger said she hoped people keep their eyes open for any clues to her daughter's whereabouts, and said how touched she's been by the considerable attention and support from friends and strangers throughout the Willamette Valley. The reward for Brooke's safe return hit $30,000 and kept growing. On November 30th, 2004, a foreign exchange student in New Mexico was grabbed at knifepoint and ordered into the back of a red two-door Honda with tinted windows. The assailant drove her to a deserted parking lot and threatened to kill her unless she undressed and performed oral sex on him. He tied her ankles together with a shoelace, tied her wrists with a scarf, stuffed her panties into her mouth, and pinned them, thereby tying another shoelace around her head. Then he drove her to another parking lot. At one point, he stepped outside the car, and she wriggled her hands and ankles free and ran. According to the Oregonian, Dana Finks, a waitress driving her 3 daughters to their grandmother's house in Albuquerque, was stopped at a red light when she saw a young blonde woman wearing only an unzipped jacket with her underwear up around her neck come running down the street. The young woman ran across traffic and into a Mexican restaurant. Ebony Finks, the 17-year-old daughter in the car, ordered her mother to pull into the restaurant parking lot, where she jumped out and met the naked girl coming out. No one inside the restaurant had offered to help her. Hysterical, the woman got into their car and told her story in heavily accented English while Dana called 911 on her cell phone. Fresh knife marks on the woman's neck validated her story. The red Honda drove slowly by them in the parking lot several times before the police arrived. The victim took police to the parking lot where she was assaulted. They found a shoelace on the ground. When they interviewed neighbors, they were told that a man named Joe hung around there a lot. With the details provided by the college student, Albuquerque police arrested Joel Patrick Courtney, a married father of 3. After being treated at the hospital, the woman positively identified him as her attacker. He was arrested and charged with first-degree criminal sexual penetration, kidnapping, and aggravated battery. Joel Patrick Courtney of Rio Rancho, New Mexico, was no stranger to the law. Just 5 months before being arrested for this abduction and sexual assault, his 12-year-old son called the police on him for domestic violence against Courtney's wife. But it had started long before. Courtney, born June 2, 1966, in Beaverton, Oregon, attended both Beaverton and Sunset high schools. He left school in 1984. In 1985, he was charged with attempted rape and first-degree sex abuse in Oregon's Washington County. On the night of that assault, he'd been drinking beer, smoking marijuana, and snorting cocaine with a female friend from school. She was driving him home when he started to kiss and fondle her. When she pushed him away and told him to stop, he punched her, yanked her out of the car, threw her to the gravel, pulled off her jeans and panties, and unzipped his pants. She stopped fighting, and he lost interest. She went to the police when she found out he had done similar things in the past. They were both 18. He pled guilty to first-degree sex abuse and received a 3-month jail sentence and 5 years of probation. He subsequently violated probation and spent 2.5 years in state prison. According to Diana Rogers, an adjunct professor at the University of Oregon, rarely is an offender caught the first time he offends. Chances are he had quite a juvenile record of assaultive behavior with some sexual component to it. His list of infractions was lengthy, including felonies, misdemeanors, and various other violations, but the one that was of most interest was his drunk driving violation in January of 2004. Courtney, at the time a supervisor for a construction cleaning company, was driving a green 1997 Dodge Caravan, a company vehicle, from Portland to Newport, Oregon, to appear for his drunk driving charge on May 24, 2004, the day Brooke Wilberger disappeared. He never arrived at court. At 1:15 p.m. he called the court and left a message that he'd been delayed, was in Corvallis, and was on his way. According to Dr. A. Nicholas Groth in his book, Men Who Rape, The Psychology of the Offender. Rape is always and foremost an aggressive act. In some offences, the assault appears to constitute a discharge of anger. It becomes evident that the rape is the way the offender expresses and discharges a mood state of intense anger, frustration, resentment, and rage. In other offences, the aggression seems to be reactive. That is, when the victim resists the advances of her assailant, he retaliates by striking, hitting, or hurting her in some way. Hostility appears to be quickly triggered or released, sometimes in a clear, consciously experienced stage of anger, or in other cases in what appears to be a panic state. In still other offences, the aggression becomes expressed less as an anger motive and more as a means of dominating, controlling, and being in charge of the situation, an expression of mastery and conquest. In a fourth vicissitude, the aggression itself becomes eroticized, so that the offender derives pleasure from both controlling his victim and hurting her. An intense sense of excitement and pleasure is experienced in this context, whether or not actual sexual contact is made. These variations on the theme of aggression are not mutually exclusive, and in any given instance of rape, multiple meanings may be expressed in regard to both the sexual and the aggressive behaviors. If Courtney was particularly stressed over his upcoming court date, perhaps he had an idea of what could take the edge off that anxiety. Groth goes on to say about those who rape in anger. Typically, such an offender reports that he did not anticipate committing a rape. It was not something he fantasized or thought about beforehand. It was instead something that happened on the spur of the moment. So, that green minivan that Brian saw driving recklessly at or around the time of Brooke's disappearance took on a whole new meaning and a new priority level for the police. During a routine background check, Albuquerque police learned that Courtney had failed to show up for his court date in Newport. The Newport officials, upon hearing of Courtney's situation and recalling the persistently public efforts of the Wilberger team, referred Albuquerque to the Benton County Police, and there the link was made. Sung-Koo Kim was removed from the investigators' list as a suspect. He was put on hold for trial on myriad theft charges, as his relatives were suing 2 cities, a county, and nearly 40 police officers for $11 million, claiming their home was searched illegally. In February 2005, a judge in New Mexico granted Corvallis police a search warrant for Courtney's DNA fingerprints, swabs of saliva, and various hairs from his face and pubic area. In May, Corvallis investigators asked the public for any information about a 1997 green Dodge Caravan. They got it. The van was recovered, though not in New Mexico and not in Oregon. Investigators did not release information about the van, fearing anything they said could compromise the case. No one wanted this case compromised. In July, the Benton County Grand Jury heard testimony from 13 live witnesses, including Wilberger's family and investigators, and reports from 3 experts, including 2 FBI crime lab analysts and a physician. FBI forensic DNA examiner Rhonda Craig, who worked for the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, testified by report, as did FBI DNA examiner Constance Fisher. The grand jury returned a 19-count indictment accusing 39-year-old Joel Patrick Courtney of 14 counts of aggravated murder, alleged in alternative theories, in other words, 1 count for every theory as to how he may have murdered her, 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping in the first degree, 1 count of first-degree rape, 1 count of first-degree sexual abuse, and 1 count of first-degree sodomy. In Oregon, prosecutors do not need a body to secure a guilty verdict, and according to Benton County District Attorney Scott Heiser, his office was ready to pursue the case aggressively. Oregon law doesn't require recovery of the body of a murder victim. He considered Courtney's arrest to be a milestone in the case, yet only a first step in what promises to be a long legal process. Courtney was originally held on a $100,000 cash-only bond, and then in Bernalillo, New Mexico County Jail, without bond. He refused to waive extradition, which required Oregon Governor Ted Kolongoski to issue a warrant to have him delivered to Oregon for prosecution. Extradition papers were in the works, but Oregon wanted to wait until the New Mexico assault charges were adjudicated before bringing him to Oregon for trial. Then prosecutors would have 120 days to put him on trial for Wilberger's murder. Courtney's sister has cooperated with the police. In an interview with coed TV, she claimed that Joel suffered a troubled childhood and had a long history of drug and alcohol problems. If he is found guilty, she said, he needs to be held accountable. Justice needs to be served. Bernalillo County, New Mexico District Attorney Carrie Brandenburg said she thought Courtney may have been linked to some other disappearances and wanted investigators to examine where else Courtney may have traveled and stayed between Corvallis and Albuquerque and see if there were any unresolved cases. Due to restrictions on information and evidence, little is known about the green minivan, where it was found, by whom, and what investigators found inside. One can infer from the DNA reports submitted to the grand jury and their subsequent indictments that enough evidence was found in the van to change this case from a kidnapping to a murder. At a press conference on August 3, 2005, local investigators thanked the community for their contribution of leads to the case, but said they would no longer need the public's help in terms of tips or information in the case. Benton County District Attorney Scott Heiser would not release any information that might have jeopardized what they considered to be a strong case. Heiser never prosecuted a death penalty case before and would not say whether he would seek that punishment for Courtney. There were 30 inmates on Oregon's death row at the time, back to Diana Rogers, who treated sex offenders in Lane County, Oregon for decades. Typically, violent offenders require escalating violence to satiate their escalating needs. Respites between episodes get shorter, the offenders take greater risks, and unfortunately, it is not uncommon for a sadistic rapist to eventually murder. On August 5th, Brooke's family posted a new message on the website, thanking those who helped to search for Brooke. Our main goal remains to find Brooke and see that justice is served. We believe families are eternal, and Brooke will always be a part of our family.